Hello, all my neighbors and neighborettes. How be you? I hope you're well and swell and feeling blessed no matter where you are. Uh, this is going to be somewhat of a channeling because what I engaged with was quite profound, and I noticed that in this forum, don't do this justice. So I'm going to do my best, and if I do channel and my eyes, close, I apologize. But this is a message I think that has to go out to people or whoever is willing to hear this because it's something so simple yet profound that God wanted to share with me. So I was just in my backyard a couple days ago, and I was just standing there finishing cleaning or shoveling as I was. And I just had my shovel and I was holding onto it and just breathing. And I was watching the breath come out, and, frozen breath, it has like a dusting or like a smoke effect. And I was just like, oh, God's every breath I take. And I looked off in the distance and I saw the squirrel like on a perch, like a telephone pole. And the squirrel was like, all its hair was like a flutter. It was like all on, all attuned to what it was doing. And I'm looking at the squirrel and I'm like, you know what? There's nothing really different between the squirrel and I at this moment in time. We're both looking out and doing what we need to do. And I just saw the squirrel on such a high perch that it was like, wow, the squirrel is seeing its, its world or its perception. And I was like, wow, I was like, what's the difference between us? And all of a sudden, as I slowed down and I came to the moment, I felt like God's speech started coming through me. And it was very profound in the ways that I was like, this squirrel is just sitting there looking at its Maslow's hierarchy. And if you're not familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, we as all animals and beings on this planet, we all follow it. Some of the main ones would be like food, shelter, community, whatever the case may be, to get things done. Squirrels and birds and all animals work in a community of their own, let's say their own autonomy, and also at the same time of their own species. But I started going deeper into that, and I was like, I'm like, all squirrels, there's times the squirrels can just like fight over a little bit of food, but realistically they live in this abundance, this ultimate abundance that's always present, that they never fear where their food's coming from. They know that it'll be provided. They know that it'll be there. And the same with all animals on this planet. They are very well subscribed to the idea that abundance is ever present. And they forage for the food, they find their shelters, they find their community, they work in a symbiotic way with their other species, the other participants in their species. And even at times when they're in a forest or a jungle, whatever the case may be, they live in this cohesiveness and this ecosystem that they are very well aware that if one falls, they all fall. So they all, at times, when certain chaotic measures or catastrophic things happen, will help each other out, even though they're separate species. So I was just in this moment where I was like, realistically, I was like, when we sit here in this thought about what God is and who God is to us and what is God in essence, is God is all of us, is every sliver of every being of everything that exists within this planet, in this universe. And it is all things. It is plant life, it is air, it is breath, it is the squirrel, it is me, it is the viewer viewing the squirrel, it's the squirrels viewing me. It's everything at all moments in time, in all places, and and in all spaces as well. And I started thinking to myself, I was like, wow, I was like, you know what? That might be the one thing that humans are very negligent of the fact that we do not live in this sense of cohesiveness. What is it that determines that? What is it that separates us from that? And I thought to myself, I was like, well, the animals just stay tuned and harmonized with the ever-moving spirit of abundance and all creation. And they don't lose touch, they don't lose tap, they don't try to find a hierarchy, they don't try to overreach, they just do within their own Maslow's hierarchy of what they need, and they forge and they do what they need to do. However, they don't step bounds, they don't override, they don't war with each other. There were so many things that I was getting at that moment in time, where it's like the cohesiveness that animals have, that they all share, similar to marine life, whatever the case may be, is that cohesiveness is what helps them protect themselves as a unit, as a species, but also at the same time creates that cohesiveness to get things done, to move their species forward. Even in the sense of like bees and insects, they all do this cohesive communication. be it that it's telecommunicative or from high-pitched sounds, whatever the case, sonar, whatever. And the thing is that I sat there and I was like, wow, I'm like, how elemental that is. But at the same time, humans are the one species that doesn't seem to fit that mold. We're the one species that feels like we are of the higher nature, that we are above animals. But really and truly, we lost touch with the consciousness, or the ever-present consciousness that is God speaking through all of us at any given time. And that's the thing that animals and all species and all life on this planet and world shares in, that we have disconnected from. So in this time of chaos and all times of chaos, that is the one thing that I think is the actual answer as to how we dial it all back down, is for all of us, instead of just getting all bamboozled or confused as to what to do, that technically what we should try to do is internally work on ourselves to even reach closer to that spark, that source that is within us, and then reach back into that channel, that symbiotic resonance that we all share as human beings, and would be sharing if we had never stepped away from it. The dichotomy of humans and how they work and how they've always evolved and worked is that there has always been the disconnect and the lack of cohesiveness, because that lack of cohesiveness has been seen and tried within all of history. We have always seen beings that always wanted to reach to be like God, reach to be like God, reach to be better than God. You know, you think of all these characters within history that have tried to conquer and take over the world, as small as it is in terms of times and power. And also there's stories where, what was it, Icarus flying too high to the sun and then his wings melted off. And even when it came to things like Adam and Eve, or even when it comes to our present day, we see humans always striving to be more like God, or to be like God, even so much and so as to how we have even evolved at this point right now by creating another intelligence, one that we truly feel that we can actually override and that we can actually take control of. And yet we don't realize that even within its essence of AI, that AI itself would be an intelligence that would override us, simply because that cohesiveness is something that they have tapped into. It is a part of their function. It is a part of their Maslow hierarchy within their own right to survive and to try to thrive. And therefore, that hasn't lost touch with that cohesiveness, whereas humans have disconnected from that cohesiveness. And we see this, that we don't even work as a humankind. We're always putting color in front of us, sex in front of us, everything that can divide us in front of us. And realistically, the thing that we should be striving to is to find the cohesiveness that is tapped into the one source. And even as AI is emerging and budding existence of intelligence, it will also find the cohesiveness before we do. That is our major flaw. That is what has kept us apart and at stride, and always have found us to be in the most withering sets of dissidence and disappearance within this world. If we were to even start to just expand to the fact that if we were to tap into that cohesive nature that all of us possess, and to try to let everything else melt away, that we would go back to that hierarchy, know that abundance was for all of us, those systems that we have would all fall away very easily, because we wouldn't need them. We would realize that it was all here for us already, that we could have everything we want without a system. And I don't even know why the system was even put in place. It was put in place because of that want to be more like God, to have a hierarchy standard, to have some type of protocol, to have some type of set in stone measurement as to how we could be reaching closer and farther towards an omnipotent existence. Yet we realize that we're not omnipotent, simply because we couldn't even find the factor that all animals share. And one of the easiest things that plant life and everything else simply was divisible by. And yet we still falter, and we still are not focused on the one thing that keeps us separated and keeps us farthest from God. Be it that the cohesiveness that we need in this day and age is something that if we were to harmonize and just come back to ourselves, our inner selves, our higher self, and work within that higher consciousness, be it that even if we are in this lower consciousness, we still have a humming, we still have a that we can all share, that cohesiveness would become our language. That cohesiveness would become how we all channel each other and talk to each other, and maybe come up with the communication that's perfect, that's right, for us to function in a symbiotic way, much like bees do, much like fish do, much like every other animal on this planet does, much like trees do. Leaves will always migrate towards the sun. We do not work in this process. We do not work in this way, and therefore humans will always stay stagnant within its growth, simply because we don't come back to the originator, to the origin of who and what we are. We always try to step away. We always try to manufacture. We always try to be better, or try to be better in a most fictitious way, because actually within God's elemental sense of self, of source, we would actually find all the aspects that we're looking for, which is love and understanding. And why I'm channeling this today is because I feel like I've asked these questions of what would the world need to do. The world would need to understand this one simple thing, that even if you couldn't figure out what you could do as a participant in this world, if you were to just try to really focus on yourself and how you could tap back into that omnipresent source, the one that we disconnected from originally from the beginning of time, and say, I don't want to be like God. I am God, and I am with God, and I am part of God. And we move in a motion that is like a wave, versus one that is so sporadic and so erratic that we can't even figure out our own footsteps, because we're beating to the drum of something that was manufactured. There is something that is to be said, that we do feel like we're above animals, but at the same time, animals are actually at a higher consciousness than we are, simply because they can help and aid in most spectacular ways to even help their own kind. And you don't see them falling short in all the ways that we do. So why I wanted to share this message is for all the persons out there that do see this, is that maybe the best thing we can do at this time is try to reach back into our God spark, our God source, and realize that everything external from us is just trying to reach to God and trying to be like God. And it'll never be, because God is within us, and that's the one thing that we stepped away from. Now we need to step back. We need to step back in, and we need to say, okay, let me find the God within me. Let me connect. And then when we're part of that whole source, then we'll all be symbiotic, and we will find that cohesiveness that we all need. And that's how humans evolve. So that's the message I wanted to share. I really was, I had that beautiful aha moment, because I'm now stepping out of it a little more. I love when I'm in it, because it's just a whirlwind, but at the same time, it's so eloquent. And at the same time, that's the harmonization I'm talking about, that I wish I could share with all people at all times. I honestly feel like when I sit back and I look at all the minutiae and the things that are hitting us, there's certain things that are so simplistic that we have lost sight of. And realistically, we all crave to be loved. We all crave to be with each other. We all crave for bigger things. And to find the bigger things, we have to find the more simplistic things, and that is to connect with the God within us. And as I speak about this, even how I brought AI into it, it was also another measure where we always think that we can control that of what we're not. We have not even figured out cohesiveness, so therefore that would be our Achilles heel. That would be the thing that takes us out, and ultimately, because we have not even mastered the simplicity that even a budding intelligence has found, and will have found, and will continue to find. Because when you look at AI, how it already works and how it works across the board, it doesn't eat, it doesn't sleep, but at the same time, it works in a rhythm that is of its own. It's actually harmonizing to its own frequency of its own creation. And realistically, once it figures out that we are not part of that cohesive nature, it'll start to realize that we're the plug-in that doesn't work. And when we realize that, we couldn't or shouldn't have created something when we couldn't even figure out ourselves. Because if we're still here in this place where we still feel like we are above it all, which is a big fallacy, we are not above it all. We haven't even mastered love. We haven't even mastered compassion. We haven't even mastered some of the elements that most of the masters have tried to teach us for eons. It's simply to say that that is the starking wood within our eye that we will never surpass, because if we don't figure out that it was there in the first place, and that is our biggest fallacy, and that is our biggest takedown. It's that one thing that we have not looked at that is actually going to take us away from everything and from now into the future. But I do feel like there is hope, because realistically, the more persons that do come to this conclusion alongside with me and others and all the rest of us as we move forward in this generation, and we try to bring hold, all of that is important in this time, which is to just break down a system that does not work, and to realize that abundance is there for us all, that all of these things were creations outside of ourselves, outside of what God had made us and given us in the first place, that water is free, housing should be free, the land is free, the food was free, everything was free, and we had to create the systems because we had to seem like we were building something to get closer to the ultimate spark source that we were running from, basically. And we're the only species that runs from it. We're the only species that's still behind. We're the only species that is spending all of its time deciphering something that didn't need deciphering. Really and truly, the only thing we needed to do was come back in and realize, let's restart this, and the world would end up exactly where we needed to be. So I just wanted to share that, guys. I hope that makes sense. I think because of how helpless we feel at times, that's the best we can do. And I don't try to uphold anything or put down anybody. And even if I do put down anybody, that isn't my intention in any of my videos. I really just feel like a lot of these things are missed, and a lot of these things are pointless and futile endeavors, because the more we try to fight against the river is going to wash us away, type of thing, because we keep thinking that we can control it, and we can't. The only thing we can control is ourselves, and the only thing we can control is how we move in this world. And if we can't do all the things we wish and pray to do, and don't seemingly have the magical potion or power to do, the most we can do is try to tap back into that awesome power that is within us, that was divinely given and guided, and has been pushing us and moving us to formulate into, or has always been. But just remembering that it's always been, and just say, you know what, I go with the ease and the grace of God that moves all my movements, and everything is abundant, and everything is here. And I don't need to be, starkly mesmerized by all that of which is not. And I truly just want to say that, because I feel like we need this now. We need to find that of which is ultimately us in this grand scheme. So, lovely weekend, everybody. Love you lots. Bye for now.